It's nice of you to be here today, and thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. So nice to see you, Maura.
It
Happy to
has
be
been,
here.
it has been a while, and as I said earlier, what I've loved is the many career chapters that you've created and built. But I want to obviously start off with your latest one, Proof of Learn. It's an education platform that, as I mentioned earlier, is leveraging blockchain and extraordinary technologies to really revolutionize and make education accessible. Can you talk a little bit about your latest venture, but also what it means for the world of education, and how we even think about lifelong education in the future?
Absolutely. So Proof of Learn is my newest venture. We got seed funded in December, and it's really wanting, our vision is to be the leading educational platform in the metaverse. I know that's a head scratcher for many people because it's unpacking even just the metaverse and why we're doing it. And we're using the power of blockchain to credential and make transparent when people pass certain level of assessments, and we're starting with code development. And the power of that transparency allows anyone in the world to have access to education as long as they've got an internet connection. And as I mentioned, we're starting with web development. And we're also using the blockchain for incentives, Moira. So using the power of tokenization to reward what we call a learn to earn protocol, so that you can actually go to school and earn income. So we previously paid tuition. Khan Academy revolutionized the world on online learning for free. Our intent really is to launch projects like MetaCrafters, which is teaching people to code for free, and at the same time, they could also earn income.
Which I love, because it's also creating access to lifelong learning, these vocational skills that are so critical in the
Yes.
marketplace today. I think so often we assume as education, I have two young boys, we assume education was sort of, through university, but today education really is a lifelong process, and the idea of leveraging these new tools and technologies to make it accessible, but to make it relevant. Can you
That's right.
share, you mentioned, you start off mentioning that this is an educational platform in the metaverse. There's a lot of metaverse going on, blockchain, Web3. I mean, I feel like we're in this moment of words getting thrown out. Can you just sort of boil down for people in terms of understanding what ultimately these types of technologies and tools can empower in a way that makes it accessible for all of us?
Absolutely. So let me unpack some of it, because I think what sometimes the definition of crypto overwhelms and it assumes fraudulent currency. And really it's unpacking the power of the technology, as you point out, to create social impact. So blockchain technology is really a ledger that is determined to record transaction by consensus, a group of different servers and softwares to validate a certain transaction that has happened, rather than concentrated with a centralized authority. And the reason that decentralization matters a lot is it creates a sense of accessibility, borderless meritocracy, and transparency. So education is a natural place that actually can use the power of technology, as I pointed out, to credential. So that diploma that you normally see on the wall, that few institutions around the world, even though there's thousands of them, not everyone has access to that, the ability to get that diploma. But if you can take an online course and learn to earn, we can then record your ability to pass that course while you're earning, and then you could carry that around with you the rest of your life. And so think about that diploma as if it's on software. That's blockchain technology. What is Web3? Web3 is really a philosophy that is new. It's been around, Moira, but it's new in a sense that the power of blockchain is now allowing us to really see the vision in full of the internet and Web 1. Web 1 was reading information. Web 2 was reading and writing information. That is, you can now share your information. We saw that in Facebook when we would put our pictures and all the different things that we enjoyed. But what Web3 now promises is ownership. So tokens and blockchain permit this sense of Web3, where communities can now own what they're contributing to the internet. So if you contribute your knowledge, you can also be part owner of the projects that we are creating. And so that's definitely changing, and it's creating a sense of accessibility, not only in terms of education, but the fact that you can benefit from what you're contributing to a certain project and actually own equity and own overall growth of this overall projects that's happening in the space.
So we're at this, what you're talking about, this really extraordinary intersection of many different forces that are coming together, many different technologies, obviously things like, the fact that these screens are in our pocket 24 hours a day, and the like, that have the chance to revolutionize education, as you just talked about, but every aspect of our life. But something you've done a lot throughout your career is advancing opportunity for those who don't necessarily have a voice, whether that be women or other underrepresented communities. You've talked a lot, especially as one of the few women, but also one of the few Filipino women, for example, in blockchain. You've talked a lot about how we need to ensure that these underrepresented communities are a part of this next chapter, that they aren't written out of some of the most promising opportunities of the future. How do you think about doing that, and what does that mean to you personally?
So important to me. Maura, as you know, I was born and raised in the Philippines, and have always been near and dear to my heart on how to help developing economies. And so one of the powers of blockchain is, as I said, the beauty of accessibility. Ai-jen Poo, who founded the National Domestic Workers Alliance, is a very dear friend. She and I always envisioned, how could we have caregivers who get paid below minimum wage own a piece of care.com? The capitalist structure prior to, I think, blockchain and Web3, it's just harder to do that. How do you construct the right incentive for a for-profit to do that? You know what I'm talking about, right? It's not that easy in the current structure to raise money. And how do you create underserved communities to become owners into the future? And so my dream was always, how do you allow underserved communities not only to create career pathways for them, but to educate them around how to actually, invest in their own value creation into the future. And so that's part of the reason my co-founder, Kevin Yang and Lauren Tourneau, and I, our go-to-market strategy for MetaCrafters, for Web2 to Web3 developers, is really to focus on developing economies like the Philippines, India. And we're able to do this now, given that crypto is global. And as I said, it's accessible to all. The technology is allowing us to move that quickly. And that's, as a technologist and a person who's very focused on consumer applications that create social impact in the world, I just feel this is a gift to any entrepreneur who wants to make a difference.
You talked about the fact that people can really be a part of and own the value creation in a way that was never really before possible in so many different areas. What does that mindset shift look like? What does it mean for people to sort of understand value creation as it relates to their ability to be more of a force in the world, or to monetize that, or maybe think differently about skill sets or traditional work that they may not have had the same pathways to be able to build a career or build income from?
Well, again, the beauty of technology is that we are moving into a creator economy that we've heard thrown around. The beautiful thing about the creator economy is that as you contribute, however small or how large the project, is that you own the asset that you created. And that is a variety of assets. It could be a sentence that you wrote. It could be code that you created. It could be a simple drawing. Even children are starting to create non-fungible tokens and contributing as artists. So I think there's many ways, especially as we think about the new generation that is coming up. They are growing up in a world where their lives are online. They're already in the virtual world. They share a lot of their lives. But how do they do that in such a way that their digital contributions are something that they can actually own, because they are creating? And the fact that that can happen, whether you're a student in Africa, a student in India, or wherever you may be learning, that's the power of where we're going, Moira. And I'm just so excited about it, that we, that growth, I've always believed in growth as a capitalist, but without inclusion, to me, is not real growth. So the fact that blockchain is enabling that is pretty powerful stuff.
Sheila, I'd be curious because you are a serial entrepreneur. I mentioned earlier that you have seen the entrepreneurial landscape from so many different perspectives: founding companies, investing in companies, you advise them, and you support so many different entrepreneurs. For you personally, launching this next venture, what or where have you been either stretched as an entrepreneur, or what's been reinforced for you in terms of the qualities or skill sets that are imperative no matter sort of what stage of the process that you're in?
I mean, the big thing for me is really the ongoing curiosity and eagerness to learn. No pun intended on proof of learn here, Maura. I watched a documentary of a grandmother who was 65 years old in a rural province of the Philippines, and she had downloaded a crypto wallet, purchased Ethereum, purchased NFT, and was playing an Axie Infinity game that was play to earn, and she was making more than the average income in her rural area. She's 65 years old. I certainly was already playing and downloading wallets, but I found it challenging. And the fact that there's a humility around that even undereducated people can really, the power of that earn can really allow them to leap these myths that they have. And then back to leadership, not only for me personally, to have that ongoing curiosity. I'm 52, my co-founder's 27, my other co-founder's in her 40s. And we all are on a journey, irrespective of our generation, of using power of technology to educate each other, learn from each other. And so that's something that's stayed with me. And that's why I have this podcast called Webbed. Love for you to be a guest on crypto curious to crypto confident people. It's W3B apostrophe D for Web3. And it's because I've been a Web 1, a Web 2, and a Web 3 entrepreneur. And it matters a lot that I've just wanted to learn throughout all of this, Maura. And then the second thing I would add is just really embracing the importance of culture, because it's constantly changing. If you're wanting to learn Japanese and a new language, it's the same thing that we often say. You've got to immerse yourself in the culture, eat the food, be around the people, so that you're really immersive in the language. And so if you're also curious, not only about the mental learning, but around culture building and changes in different environments, and Web3 is a different culture, that's something that's really important in a leader as you're migrating in your different roles.
So much of what we talk about is, the skills of an entrepreneur. You mentioned always being curious, obviously resiliency, being able to identify opportunities, be the solution. When you look at how we talk about entrepreneurship today and what it takes to be successful, is there one quality or skill set that you think is underappreciated or not talked about enough when it comes to at least what was been impactful in your personal journey, or what you see today that would be helpful for other entrepreneurs?
Yes. I mean, the one phrase I use, and it has stuck with me, and I don't know that, especially majority of entrepreneur men are as comfortable talking about authentic boldness. It's very interesting in my journey of authenticity, whether in Web 1 or Web 2, how much more so in this modern technology of Web 3, where the whole world is going, that authenticity is not optional. It's sort of a must-have, given the technologies becoming community consensus driven and transparency driven, that authenticity and staying true who you are inside and out, whether in the company or outside the company, and a boldness in the sense of taking the leap. I have in Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3, not only to learn, but to take risk and ask questions and know that we will fall, we will learn, and that we will do things together. The great thing about Web 3 is it is the community building with you. And so there's a permission to fail, get back up again, and work together with the community to create something great that will create a lasting impact in the world.
I love that sort of you talk about authenticity, something that is so often seen as a soft skill, but as something that's imperative, or that is sort of the new leadership paradigm in the Web3 world. At what point in your career, in these different junctures, did you feel like you were able to fully come into yourself as a leader, or embrace your authentic self. But what advice would you give to others who still may wrestle with what that looks like day to day, or may not always feel comfortable with leading with their truest self?
It was actually after my first job out of college, because I got pregnant between my sophomore and junior year, Moira, and I hid the fact that I was a young mother because I was afraid that if they knew that I was a young mom, that I wouldn't get the plum projects. They would judge me compared to the men, because young fathers were considered, serious and dependable and responsible at a young age, and a mom might seem distracted. I lasted a year in that job. I decided after that I was going to pursue authenticity as my path in my career, so that I could unleash who I really who was I really deep inside, and then I could find the superpowers and the strengths that I had to contribute to a team. And any time that you kind of hide your true self, you spend a lot of energy doing that, as opposed to finding your true strengths to give back. And then I also found that authenticity allowed me to focus on others, because then you're less insecure and in your head around trying to figure out, who am I? And if your pursuit is just, you're comfortable, sort of like being in your family, you can be you can find the strength in you. It's that path of finding that early. And I feel privileged that I was challenged early of being a young mother, not that I wish it upon everybody. And I realized that, true pursuit for me, success is figuring out ways to make an impact more in people's lives. It had to be defined early.
No, those things are such gifts to learn them early, because you mentioned earlier, you mentioned just a minute ago how much energy it takes when you are not your authentic self, and you spend so much time thinking about what you're not versus what you are, which is your superpowers, your strengths. And instead of leaning into those, you're always saying, "I'm not this, I'm not that." That is the surest path to failure when you aren't thinking about how to harness your own strengths and unique skill sets. Sheila, as we wrap up, it's graduation season. I've been asking many of the people I interview, especially, really illustrious entrepreneurs and business leaders such as yourself. We have newly minted college grads going out into a very crazy world, a world of a lot of uncertainty, disruption, but also in that opportunity as well. With your story in particular, sort of how you've navigated your own life journey, is there one piece of advice that you like to share with people at this stage within their own journey?
Absolutely. And it's back to that authentic boldness. Embedded in that is a sense of being patient and taking risk at the same time. And that's a hard one, because taking risks suggests being spontaneous, going out there. You can actually take calculated risk, and it's okay. But the patience is really important for this generation. I have a 30-year-old and a 22-year-old, and there's a desire, two boys, Moira, and their desire sometimes is jump in, already own, already lead. And it's the same thing that my parents said to me. And I always say the next generation, when we keep repeating this patience thing, but it is real. It's not saying that you can't be a young entrepreneur. You should absolutely pursue that. But the patience is that, leadership, I always say, be really demanding of outcomes, but be chill with people. And that just requires a journey of realizing, learning about yourself so that you can figure out how to inspire others, so that there can be bigger impact, because now you're a team doing it together. So I really think it's back to that authenticity and overall patience to get to where you want to get to.
I love that advice. I haven't heard that very often in terms of the patience part, because I think we all feel the need to go to solve.
That's right.
And sometimes that takes time. It takes experiences that you have yet to go through. And sometimes it feels at odds with when you have that ambition and you want to be successful. Sometimes patience feels at odds with the timeline that you set out.
Exactly. And what society demands of all of us is to just, it's ambition. And you're not ambitious enough if you don't go for it right away. But maybe in your own self-reflection, that there's more maturity, there's more learning. This is the right supportive team that can help you grow personally. I certainly went through that in my own leadership journey.
Well, that is great advice, and I think it's probably advice that holds true for people coming out of college, but any age as well. Sheila, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Really, really excited to see what's ahead with your latest venture, but also really appreciative of the ways in which you continue to be such a positive and powerful force around supporting other entrepreneurs, creating access to opportunity, and really leveraging the technologies and tools in the moment to be a positive force for change around the world. So hopefully this is one of many conversations, Sheila, and appreciate you being here today. Thank you everyone for joining us here as well. We look forward to seeing you back here next time. Thanks, Sheila.